Good morning, everyone. Today it's 9:30 on February 13th, 2025, and we want to welcome you to the Facilities and Purchasing Committee meeting. First, I just want to remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded for those that won't be able to attend live. Also, if you could just mute your microphone so that there's no noise during the meeting. What we will do is give everyone in the community an opportunity to ask questions after each of the topics. And by asking questions, if you could, we're not going to put comments into the comment bar, but rather if you could just raise your hand and we'll give you an opportunity to say your comment in person as opposed to actually writing it down so that there's more of a dialogue between the community as well as us during this meeting. So without further ado, if we could start, we'll start with the list of bills with Mr. Orlando, please.
Are there any questions regarding the list of bills in particular items?
Kimberly, any comments, questions? No? Shayna?
No, everything looks pretty good. Thank you.
Melanie? You're on mute. Sorry,
No.
Melanie.
I'm sorry. No comments.
All right, and I have no comments as well. There was a comment last meeting with regards to the visa bills. Mr. Orlando, if you don't mind just kind of providing a little bit of an update, there was a question as to whether or not there was a way to identify the specific vendor name for the visa charges.
So, yes, last month there was a question about the Visa vendor names on the list of bills. So how this works is from Visa, we download or export all the transactions, and that has our budget code and account information on it. It doesn't have the vendor information, so it would take additional work manually to go into the file, enter every name of every vendor, which could be hundreds of names every month. And due to the limited resources we have in the department, this will lead to additional costs, which would be overtime. But I want to rest assured we have the paper backup of all the transactions. They're here in the business office. They're reviewed by the business office staff. If there's any questions, there's controls in place on the procurement card. So only certain vendors can actually be approved. So it would flag any type of unusual activity. And also part of our annual audit report, annual audit by our independent CPA firm, we provide every statement, all the transactions for them to audit. So there's quite a number of controls in place to make sure all the transactions are legit.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And if there are any specific questions regarding specific charges, obviously the community can bring that up and we can you can look back into the specific backup information for that specific charge, right?
That's correct.
Perfect. All right, excellent. With no other questions.
Well, may I have a question? I have a question about the list of bills.
Yeah, sorry. Just if there's no other questions from specifically from the board, if I can open it up to the community, if you don't mind just raising your hand, and then Ms. LaPera will call on you and you'll be able to ask your question, please. Thank you.
Right.
We have Mr. Willis would like to ask a question.
Okay, first, for a while since I've been attending one of these meetings, and I'd like to thank the board for allowing members of the community to come in and to ask questions, and also to actually be given the opportunity to read the list of bills each month. So I think, as I understand, as I've seen, not too many school districts allow that with their communities, and I think it's very commendable. With that, I have a couple questions. I noticed in looking at the list of bills for approval of the payment that there were no payments for bond service. Is that correct?
For what service?
Bond service, funding for the bonds that the school district has?
Yes, there's no debt service payments due in this time period.
So that's not just an omission; it's just the fact that that in this time period there's no debt service.
Okay, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
The next question I had is on item number 20, which is a dues and fees to Visa for community relations. Do you see that, Mr. Orlando?
You said so you're looking at the Visa bill and which one are you asking for?
Line 20. Community relations, 810 dues and fees. Am I looking at the right
Line
one?
25.
Okay. Okay. So that's an instructional program outside the school day, dues and fees.
Well, I must be reading something different because I see Visa commercial services, and then it's under functions. There are different functions, and one of it is community relations, and it says object code 810, and then dues and fees.
Mr. Willis,
That's what I'm looking
if
at,
you look,
$50.
yeah, Mr. Willis, if you look on the left, there should be a number that's a line number. Do you
Mhm.
see?
Yeah.
And that's
I
Yeah,
made a
that's
mistake.
what I'm-
It's 23, Mr. Willis, it's 23, and it's human resources.
Yeah,
Visa Commercial Services, Human Resources, dues and fees, I believe is the line you're speaking of, correct?
No, I'm not. I'm speaking of the previous one, which is 20 community relations.
I don't see one.
Mr. Willis, are you on
I
this
think it
month's, are you on this month's list of bills?
Maybe I'm not. So
Yeah,
At the
forgive me
top
if
of
I-
the top of the list of bills that you're looking at, it should say for the period between January 22nd, 2025 and February 11th, 2025.
Mea culpa. I printed the wrong one, but
It's
while I'm
okay.
here, I just have so I'm sorry, I apologize for that. A couple questions with respect to the object codes generally. The object code, who determines whether a particular bill goes into which type of object code?
So there's a state accounting manual.
There's a what
Uh,
manual?
There's a state accounting manual. So all the objects are in compliance with state accounting manual, and those individual departments have a list of all the account codes, and they assign them to that particular transaction, and then they're reviewed by the business office staff if it's correct or not.
Okay, and how, if any way, does it relate to the codes on the 2028 form, the budget, the final general budget form that's submitted to the Department of the DOE? For example, pardon me, go ahead.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
What is the relationship between that number, if any, and the number on the PDE form?
It's the same account number. It's the same state accounting manual number.
It's the exact same one?
The object or the object, correct. That's by the state accounting manual.
So if I look, if you put an object code of 810 on a particular bill, I should be able to look at the
Yes.
PD 2828 and see 810.
No, so the way that the 2028, they only use the general code. They don't use the subcode of 810. They use like 800. It'll be 600. They don't break it down on the 2028. You have to talk to the state about that.
I didn't hear your last sentence. I'm sorry.
I said that's how the state requires us to report it on the 2028.
But there is a relationship. It's just more refined in the 2028, correct?
It's called a sub-account code.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Ms. LaPera, is there any other questions with regards to the list of bills?
I do not see any, no.
Great. Are we okay moving this forward?
Yes.
Dana?
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Yes, I am. Thank you.
Kimberly? I think she's shaking her head yes.
Yes, affirmative.
Okay, perfect. All right, excellent. If we could move on to the next item, please. Our next item is the purchasing report. Mr. Lill.
Good morning, Mr. Herman. Thank you. We have two items. I will take the first one. The first one is related to Black Rock Middle School, and this is a proposal to install two curb cut ramps along the side of the building near where the gymnasium currently is. Before I give the description, I just want to emphasize that this is not a code defect. This is not a construction defect or design defect. So let me repeat that. This is nothing defective related to the original construction of the building. The building meets code in all aspects. What this is based on the specific needs of various students, and I think there's an incoming student. This will allow better access and better inclusivity for that student to be able to access most of the building, primarily the lower and ground floor, if you can picture the various levels of that building. And if the elevator is broken or there is a power outage, we have provisions for that, but we had the staff at the school and also student services approach us about providing a means for this child to be able to access the lower level, like things like the cafeteria, if the child happens to be on the ground floor at the time that there's a power outage or an elevator failure. So this kind of provides other pathways for someone who has reliant on a wheelchair or similar device. So it is recommended the pricing for McCarthy Masonry and Concrete to install two new ADA compliant curb ramps at Black Rock Middle School be approved in the amount of $10,890. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Sure. Shayna, you have your hand up?
I do. I wanted to say, way to be telepathic, Mr. Lil, because I totally was going to bring up my trauma of sitting through all these meetings when we were talking about the construction of this building and wondering why we hadn't put in this ramp. So I really appreciate you heading that off at the pass, and that we're giving this consideration to a student that needs it. And I'll just end by saying that accommodations for someone benefit everyone, and it's not just one student that'll benefit from a ramp and added access like this, that all people who will use it will benefit from it, and there's a lot more benefit from it in the day-to-day on things like that. So thank you, and I would definitely support approving this.
Thank you, Shayna. Kimberly, any questions with regards to this specific item?
No questions, but I'm glad that we're doing this. Thank you.
Melanie?
Yeah, just ditto on what was already said by Shayna and Kimberly.
I agree as well. Are there any comments from the community with regards to this specific item? Ms. LaPera?
I do not see any raised hands.
There is mine. I have one.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, yes, Mr. Wells.
I just have one question about the payment of this. Maybe it should be directed to Mr. Orlando. From which fund will this bill be paid?
Peter, right there, general fund.
In the general fund? Thank you. That's all I have.
And Mr. Willis, if you, just so you know, going forward, they also, what Mr. Orlando has done is usually he'll indicate underneath it where the funding is coming from. So if you see, I don't know if you look at the Zoom screen, but under one it says budget and then it says general fund. So it directs you to be able to see where it's specifically coming from.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I just don't have that available. Next time I'll be a little more.
No, not a problem. Feel free to keep on asking. I just wanted to let you and the community know where it's available as well.
Thank you.
All right, perfect. Why don't we go to the second one and then we can move both of them together, or approve for both of them to be moved together. The second one is the replacement. Is that you, Mr. Orlando?
Actually, I'm sorry, Mr. Herman. I'm going to ask Mr. Pitts to give a description of it. And before Mr. Pitts takes the stage, forgive me, I'm going to go off script or maybe out of my lane slightly. We did have a snow event yesterday. There was a 2-hour delay, which we successfully implemented. It's been a while since we've done one of those, but I just want to recognize and really give a shout out to a lot of the staff that did a lot of hard work in the morning. Township Public Works did a phenomenal job. The Borough of Narberth had their Public Works trucks out at 4:45 a.m. yesterday. The only cars in Lower Merion were mine and the Narberth plow crews. And then our custodians, bus drivers, aides, grounds, building mechanics, really good team effort. And these buildings were in great shape. And, once the 2-hour delay was cleared, I just wanted to recognize all the heavy lifting and just the really stepping up to the plate yesterday from our crew. So forgive me for going off script, and I'll give it to Mr. Pitts.
No, we appreciate that. I think we were going to say that afterwards because the snow removal was going to lead into that. So we were going to give a huge thanks as a board and a community for that. But I appreciate you saying that. It must have been extremely difficult since the snow ended so early in the morning and had to get everything together. So we really appreciate all the efforts by you and your team. So thank you.
It was good. We had to pull the old playbook out, but they came through. Mr. Pitts.
This is snow equipment replacement. There's Kubota tractors at both high schools that were part of the original furniture, fixture, and equipment when they opened up. So they're pushing 15 and 16 years old. This is a request for replacement of with Ventrax and associated attachments, both to replace equipment and give us a little more capabilities as well. It is recommended the pricing from Turf Equipment and Supply Company for the purchase of 2 replacement Ventrac 2120M tractors with snow removal attachments under PA eMarketplace, Department of Government Services contract 44000-28342 be approved in the amount of $78,870. Subject to your questions.
Shayna?
Sure. So I'm just curious, when we buy a tractor for snow removal, for landscaping, for whatever we're buying it for, and it lives at a specific building. So let's take the first one, it's going to live at Harridan. Does that only get used at Harridan, or could it be, okay, once Harridan's cleared off, we put that tractor on a truck and we drive it 5 minutes down the road to Gladwin and we use it to clear that campus? Or is every single school building sort of allocated their own equipment?
A couple different ways. So we have more district-wide equipment, the dump trucks, some of the larger tractors, they will get moved from place to place. This type of equipment is pretty much on a per campus basis. We have this type of equipment at the 3 middle schools with all the sidewalks and the extensive areas that need to be covered. Most of the elementary schools we take care of with snow blowers. Penn Valley is one that has a lot of sidewalks with that very large campus circling the whole block. That actually has another Kubota. But for the most part, this type of equipment is not designed to go from place to place. And the people that would transport it on a trailer are busy pushing the dump trucks. So it actually detracts from getting things done to move equipment from place to place. That's why we have a lot of equipment distributed across the district for this type of activity. But we do not have this extensively at the elementary level, only at the secondary level.
That makes sense. My only question then would be, with the kind of unique setup of Kinwood and BC, does Kinwood sort of share
covers both of
them? Okay.
Yep.
Great. I saw them outside across the street from my house. And so again, thank you to the staff for keeping the campus and the neighborhood clear. So that's all I've got.
Kimberly, any questions?
I just wanted to confirm the 78,000, whatever. Is that per or for both?
Negative. It's two pieces at 39,435.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Melanie?
Yeah, I had one question. Back in March of 2022, we bought one for Black Rock Middle School, but it was only $10,000. And I just wondered what's the difference in those 2 tractors for the cost difference?
So Ms. Schaffmeister, I went back and pardon me, I have the purchasing report from March 17th of 2022. And as you stated correctly, we did purchase equipment from Cherry Valley Tractor Sales, 10,024. Now, Cherry Valley Tractor Sales, they don't actually manufacture tractors. They're like a dealer. They are like a sales rep. They have the local sales territory. We're in their sales territory. So they sell different manufacturers, one of which is Ventrac, which Mr. Pitt had described, and that has a certain piece of equipment. What was purchased on the March of 2022 purchasing report was a Kubota. Again, another manufacturer. The Kubota is actually a four-wheel utility vehicle. So it's a different manufacturer, different piece of equipment. It's kind of apples and oranges. But however, they both came on the purchasing report listed as Cherry Valley because they're the ones we fall on the sales territory for both manufacturers through Cherry Valley sales territory. So it's
Okay,
different
that makes sense.
types of
But
equipment.
Thank you
is
so
it
much.
like
Thanks.
we bought a fancier one or we bought a completely different thing? Like it's the difference,
Different animal.
not
Different.
between buying a Honda and an Acura, but between buying a bicycle and a pickup truck, right?
Between buying a golf cart and a pickup truck or something like that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Great.
I mean, they're different
Thank you so much.
manufacturers. But I can
Appreciate
understand
you.
that Cherry Valley Tractor looks a lot like a manufacturer. They're actually a sales rep that has different equipment manufacturers, different types of equipment, and they have the sales territory for different manufacturers. They have those rights, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Because it just said tractor with snow removal, so you're just like, okay, what is it? Yes, but I appreciate you.
I connected those dots and went, aha. So yes, but they're different, totally different
Yeah.
pieces of equipment, totally different purchase, just do the same manufacturer.
Okay, I appreciate that. And while I'm unmuted, I'd say I'm happy to move this forward unless there's community comments too, questions.
Like I said, just a couple questions. First, just for the public or the community, it is, if that haven't seen it, it's under the budget and it's the general fund. Just so that everyone's aware of that in case that's a question coming. Two questions. Just first, what's the life expectancy of these?
So they should last with good care, a dozen to 15 years. It really is a factor of what kind of winters you hit because the salt can be very destructive on equipment. But yeah, we would expect well over a decade for each piece.
Perfect. And then do we source out from different vendors price wise, or is this just, do we have a specific, because it's under the GGS contract, that this is the best price available?
Yeah, so we are purchasing these under the contract. That's what's available. Is it possible to go nationwide and try and find the things? Maybe, but then you're adding transport on top of that as well. These are the local vendors, and they are approved through the GGS system.
Perfect. And then the last question is that since they're replacing them, what do we do with the two older ones? Do we sell them or trade them in? Is there any value to those? Do we repurpose them for other schools or other uses?
So there is some residual value, and we will probably, once the equipment comes in, come back to the board and put it on excess and obsolete and try to recoup some money through municipal.
Perfect. All right, I have no other questions. Ms. LaPera, are there any questions from the community, please?
Can I tag on one before we open it up?
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Could
sure.
I leave after Shane and Mr. Willis?
This is like tangentially related, and I'm thinking about it because of the salt. Does the district have any kind of like car wash, vehicle wash facility? I know I'm only thinking about it because we own so many vehicles, and I know that like washing the undercarriage will make that stuff last longer. Or is that something like, do we have it? If we don't have it, do we have like a day where we put everything on trailers and take it to a bus wash or something? Like,
So sorry, Ken, the transportation facility, our bus garage at Massive Ford Road actually does have a bus wash bay. Now again, I mean that is labor intensive. It's not an automatic drive through, type of thing you'd see at, a commercial car wash. But they do have the buses in and cleaned, as frequently as possible. I mean that is also manpower and also, the amount of time that they're not on the road. So the buses do have a bus wash facility. And I'm sorry, Mr. Pitts, I cut you off. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was basically saying there is a bus wash facility, but we do not drag equipment from one spot to another. That would be very
Labor
intensive
intensive.
in terms of labor costs.
Yeah.
I do believe that the especially the secondary level, they try to rinse things off when we get to a warm day. And we
Yeah, I just know it's so hard to get the
definitely
salt off the undercarriage of a vehicle, that's the real thing. But as we're talking about having a bus wash, and we're talking about field trips and not not going out of our way. That sounds like a really fun thing to take like a kindergarten or a first grade class to come see their school bus washed. I know that my kids would have
Yeah,
loved that.
All right,
It's a
all right, we're
very-
getting off topic here. All
Sorry,
right.
sorry. I
All
apologize.
right. Any
Let's
other
get to the
any
community.
other questions? Can we open it up to the community?
I believe Mr. Willis.
No.
Oh, okay. Then nope, we're good.
All right, perfect. Besides the car wash field trip, can we move these two forward?
Yes, please.
Yes, I'm good.
Yes,
Kimberly?
please.
Perfect. Thank you very much. If we could move on to item 2C, which is ESS Northeast LLC addendum.
Hi, thanks. Good morning. Okay, so we are asking for an addendum to our ESS agreement. ESS is our third-party contractor that we get day-to-day teacher and IA subs through. We want to expand that in order to also have day-to-day counselors from time to time when we need them. Excuse me. And so this is an addendum, complying with the same rate and upcharge that we have on the other classifications of employees through ESS. And we're just asking to expand so that we can better cover our counseling suites when we have people out on a couple weeks leave.
Kimberly, any questions?
No. No,
Sheena?
thanks.
Yeah, Ms. Hanks, this is the kind of thing that we're not then responsible for paying benefits and things for this because we're contracting through a separate agency.
Correct.
And they do all of the timekeeping and all of the billing for us.
They do.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Melanie, any questions?
Just generally, we have any substitute teachers that we actually pay directly?
We have building substitute teachers in each building. Each building is allotted 4, and we pay them directly. All of our day-to-day subs are brought in through ESS.
Okay, thank you.
Just a couple questions. First is that so this isn't that we're hiring them. This just gives you the option based on need to go down that road when that need arises, correct?
Correct.
Perfect. And then is this, when you talk about counselors, is this just for the high school and middle school or also elementary school?
I think it would apply to all levels. When we have professional staff out for an extended period of time, we will hire directly a long-term substitute. But those like 2, 3, 4 week absences don't reach that level. So we want to hire them as like day-to-day staff through ESS. And I think that could be at any level. We've been fortunate that we've had some retirees want to come back and do some of this work on a couple weeks here and there. And so adding this classification through ESS would allow for that to happen.
Perfect. Thank you. Ms. LaPera, do we have any questions from the community regarding this?
Jason, I'm sorry, I do have one question. I'm
sure.
just curious, are the building subs paid comparable to the ESS subs?
They're paid more, and they're guaranteed
paid more.
work on every student day.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
I do not see any raised hands.
Okay, perfect. Are we okay with moving this forward? Kimberly?
Yes.
Shayna?
Yes.
Melanie?
Yes.
Perfect. So we'll move this forward. Thank you. And then if we could.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Ms. Hanks. And then if we could move on to our next item, which is the district-wide playground assessment draft. Mr. Lill?
Thank you. I'm just going to pause here, wait for the screen to catch up. This attachment is in board docs, so it is publicly accessible. And I just also emphasized, and it's also highlighted on the document on your screen, that this is a draft. And what this document is, this is a request for proposal for a design professional, someone who has experience and also the qualifications to do a set playground assessments. And we're looking for this district-wide at the elementary schools. Just in terms of how this is written and please forgive, it's not going to be the most thrilling document to read. I do not believe this is going to be eligible for a Pulitzer Prize, but the important thing is it does need to capture what our expectations are so that we can then go out and send this to various professionals to get proposals from them for, cost, and also to also look at their qualifications and experience to see what's the best match for us as a district. So, Ms. LaPera, if you just scan down through the introduction, one of the things,
Lynn's
Lynn,
the one that's,
sorry, I've got the wrong driver behind the steering wheel. Down around 1.3 and 1.3.1, 1.3.2, we're looking for playgrounds that are going to be an inclusive environment so they can be used comfortably by all people, regardless of ability or preference. And one of the things I put in there, and again, this is including but not limited to things like sensory play, the types of things that the community's been discussing and we've been getting through feedback over the past several months. Ms. Pringle, if you want to scroll down, I think the next major point here would be, and again, forgive me, there's a lot of information here that someone would need if they were going to submit a proposal. If you go to page 2, there's a section 2.0, which is project timeline. And before I read or describe those dates, one of the things that we're looking for with a design professional, and I'll speak to some of the people that we've found or been in communication with, we are not looking for a playground manufacturer to come in and give us recommendations, because if they're the manufacturer of a certain brand of playground equipment, they're certainly going to propose and certainly advertise their equipment. What we want is a professional who's done this before, other playgrounds, inclusive examples. And there's also design professionals who've done this for other school districts. The local facilities managers in the area, the public schools, we communicate, email each other very frequently. I was able to get some leads and references and even some RFPs from other districts. I'll touch on that later. So in terms of the timeline, we wanted to get some input and feedback from this committee regarding this proposal, which I'll get into in a minute. We always recognize, and it's part of our process, that the various steps have to be brought to the board. And well, let me just back up. The various steps need to be brought to the Facilities and Purchasing Committee, and then they go to the board, and that has a monthly timeline to it. It has a cyclical arrangement. So we are confident that we want to give people an opportunity to give some feedback on this particular document. We would issue an RFP. It can be done. It does not have to be publicly bid. This is not like a construction contract. We can find different resources and then have send it out to them and communicate directly with them. So if all goes to plan, this assessment could be approved in late April at the April meeting, and then you'd see how the dates would fall from there based on the amount of time they would need to do a thorough job. So Ms. Pringle, if you go to section 3, if you could. All this is just basically where are the different playgrounds, and we're just giving them background about the district. So this, you can keep going, Ms. Pringle, because it's a list of our 6 schools, and then the playground 1, playground 2. There's an attachment, an appendix, if you will, that gives the photos that Mr. Copeland had back in October. So I'm just going to keep going sequentially, not bounce back and forth. So scope of services, what are we asking this consultant to do? Break it down into a couple steps. First thing, would have them go out and they would inspect our current playgrounds. There is a program out there called the Certified Playground Safety Inspector, a CPSI. And this is something we would ask them to perform so that we can get an independent inspection of the current equipment. Certainly, if there's anything that needs immediate attention, we would jump on it. These are inspected frequently, but it's always good to get another set of eyes on them. 4.3 would be a site survey. There would have to be certain background information that they would have to collect, such as existing conditions. We certainly have to recognize there's parking lots and fences and other site constraints. So that's something they would need anyway, just to put together what their future plan would be. Is you have to look at what is on your site right now. Paragraph 4.4, and again, this is all really them collecting background information. I haven't really gotten yet to their big reveal, if you will. Data collection. I wanted to be specific so that they understood that this is going to require a lot of face-to-face meetings, and so I'm going to go through the different um, meetings I had in mind, and obviously this is something we could either enhance or reduce, et cetera. Clearly, we'd want this consultant to meet with each principal at each school. So there's the 6 of those, and we can coordinate and arrange that. And we want to do it on a school day, even if we could do it during recess, would be a kind of a good example. But we'd want to do that either before, during, or after a school day. So if we go to 4.5, township input, we definitely would want to meet with Parks and Rec. They've done a phenomenal job at different playgrounds. We want to go through and pick, get the consultant to have face-to-face time with them and go through some of their lessons learned. And I would gladly take the consultant to various playgrounds through Lower Merion that have recently been done or soon to come online. So we want to give them an understanding of like how many hours that's going to involve, because that's obviously going to affect their fee. So if you go continue, Ms. Pringle, we also want them to meet with the building and planning department, township engineer about any zoning or permitting. In terms of school district input, 4.6 would cover that for meetings with the administration, and then student services is a very key component of this, and they've been very intimately involved in a lot of the work we've been doing up to this point. So we want to make sure that they're engaged. And then 4.7 would be community input, and this certainly could be modified or developed. I put it out there as kind of for discussion, if you will. We would set up 2 Zoom meetings and yeah, that's right. Each of these meetings will be 2 hours in virtual. We would just have Zoom meetings, maybe do them on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, Thursday night for the community to provide input as background information. So that would take care of paragraph 4.7. Pardon me. So continuing on, let me get caught up here. Okay, so that's basically the homework, if you will. So what's the assignment? What's the deliverable? We're going to ask them to produce, and we actually have examples that various architects have produced for other school districts, Tiverton Easton being one of them. I didn't want to specify this is exactly what we want at what school and in what order. We're looking to them to give us their expertise and their experience to help us understand that. So if you go past 5.1, and again, I apologize, this is not the most exciting read through, if you will. The scope of services, everything that they had surveyed, we obviously want to have that captured. Then we want them to take that same background drawing and put their concept, their vision of the future playgrounds on these drawings. I predict that there would be somewhat of a template. There would be somewhat of a prototype, but be aware different schools have different layouts. There's different space requirements. So obviously, there is no one size fits all, but I can certainly see that there would be some template or prototype aspect to it. Again, recognizing the fact that we do have different constraints. So that would be really like an image, or they could present with renderings and things of that nature, what they would envision for the future playgrounds. And then 5.4, so make sure I didn't skip anything. 5.4, we want them to give us some feedback on surfacing. I mean, pour in place has been discussed pretty regularly. There's a discussion about cork. We spoke to one consultant who's researched these different services extensively. And that could be something they could propose when they submit a proposal. And then we are going to ask them to give us basically in 5.5. This is really the heart of it is, well, I go back. This is kind of the details of what they would show in terms of our future playgrounds, in terms of anything we need to deal with or be aware of from a subsurface or stormwater. 5.6, again, if there's something critical that has to be repaired, we want them to tell us sooner than later. I suspect we'd probably do it before the report even gets issued, and then they could give us kind of a long-term plan if necessary. 5.7, the only thing I wanted to clarify here was, oh no, this is grant funding. These consultants, I'm sure, have dealt with other districts, other municipalities. We want them to help us identify some grant programs. Now, they would not be involved in the actual grant submission unless we put them under a different again, a different assignment, we could certainly get a proposal for them to do that. But we want to see some grant programs they've utilized or at least applied to in the past. Cost projections, this is what I call, or the industry calls, an opinion of probable construction cost. So based on their image of the playground that they would recommend or design, what's it going to cost? And there's a lot of aspects to that. And 6.1. 6.2, at this point, this is more math that installation of a playground is not just the surfaces and playground equipment and installation costs. There are going to be design costs. There's going to be different types of permitting fees. So this is something on projects we typically apply as they call it a quote unquote soft cost, which I put in there in quotes. And then also, contingency here so that we can kind of have them put numbers together. Once they have the numbers together in number 7, they could give us a 5-year plan. And that would basically stretch from 2026 through 2030. I put 2031 in there. If we do decide to do a playground at Marion, that would be, I would envision that would be last. That's actually an add-on, if you will. And then if you go to 7.3, basically we'd want the cost projections, but we also have to recognize that costs are going to obviously escalate from year to year. So all those numbers there are based on a 4% escalation per year moving forward. All right, so that takes care of that. Number 8, drum roll, please. That basically would be everything that we put together and submit to the township and eventually present to this committee. So that was our plan, so that there could be a public presentation of it, similar to what will be done in a few months with the roof assessment. And then number 9 is just terms and conditions, which are standard. We actually have a template legal document we use that we use for multiple types of consultants. And then in number 10, I just wanted to make sure people recognized the way we set this up with this, whoever we choose, we have what's called master agreements for professional services. So that's like a blanket set of terms and conditions. And then we're able to assign various task orders, various work orders to them. So if we had a grant program we wanted to apply for and we wanted to use this consultant, we would just get a proposal approved by the school board. And it's a 2-page document in lieu of a 9-page agreement with terms and conditions like insurance and all the other background. So it gives us a ability to assign more work to this design firm. However, we're not required to. We can do it on a task-by-task basis. So this would be task number 1. If this is the firm we choose to use for any construction drawings in the future, again, we could assign that to them as tasks. But that's further down the line because the only commitment we'd be making to the consultant, and conversely, what the consultant would be making to us, would be to produce this report per these specifications and in the timeline given. And then, Ms. Pringle, if you can keep going, now we're into like various appendices. So if you keep going to some pictures here, we'll keep going, please. This is something the consultant can see to know where Belmont Hills is and just a snapshot of what's there. And again, these were taken directly from the October presentation. Thank you for your attention and time here, because I know that was lengthy and very detailed.
So before I open it up to Shayna, Kimberly, Melanie, and then the community, I just want to take a minute just to thank you. I know that this was a huge ask after the board meeting to put together. I know that there was a lot of intricacies of reaching out to the different other districts that have done this, and we can't thank you enough, both as a committee as well as a community, for prioritizing this and putting this together so that we can move this forward. So thank you, Mr. Lill, Mr. Copeland, Dr. Mussolini, and the rest of your team for putting this together on short notice. We really appreciate it. So I'm going to move over to Shayna. I want to make sure we have enough time to get to everyone. Shayna, any questions?
I do. And I just want to second that to my thanks to everyone for all your hard, complete work. And this is like an incredibly thorough document. The only one thing I wanted to ask, and I fully say that it's possible that I just didn't understand some of the technical phrasing of this, but I just wanted to know if there was any language in there that sort of specified the diversity of ages that we wanted to cover, because I know we have students from age 5 to age 11 in our schools, and a lot of times the playground equipment is really geared towards that 5, 6, 7-year-old, and then during recess, our third and fourth graders really are not using that equipment at all. And so I just wanted to, while we included gearing it towards diversity of abilities, we also included diversity of ages.
Thank you, Ms. Kalish. And Ms. Pringle, on page 2, right around 3.1, whatever, where it says Belmont Hills, that's a really, there you go, perfect. Ms. Kalish, that's a really good point, because as I was putting this together, and I even underlined it because it triggered in my mind as well, we're housing full day kindergarten now. And you know, if we were talking about this 2-3 years ago, there wasn't a full day kindergarten, and you know, obviously that has changed, and now we have that utilization that now brings in the 5-year-old population and through fourth. So really, we want to look at what has the most age appropriate and also benefits, and also recognizing that, you know, we do have multiple playgrounds and multiple schools. What's the best way to assign the equipment so that there's the best experience? And then also in getting feedback from the principals as well, supervision, things of that nature. So we definitely, and again, subject to community comment and things will develop as we go forward, we're envisioning this as something for that age range for kindergarten to fourth grade. I know there's playgrounds, certainly at the township level, that might have more like preschool level type things. But based on our school and our school population, you know, we were envisioning that would be that 5-year-old to, you know, 10, 11-year-old age range, subject to, you know, any feedback we get going through the process. But thank you.
Perfect. And would this RFP also include things like benches and places for the kids to put their backpacks and stuff? Because I'm just thinking about my experience at school events, and there's never enough places for the grown-ups to sit, and the kids are forever just chucking their backpacks on the ground, which is extra bad when those backpacks tend to have the expensive one-to-one devices that we are now sending home with our students. So I was just wondering if that was included in the design.
I mean, I think that's something we would look at as a district, because I think, you know, we want to have the focus on, you know, the equipment because of the inclusivity and also, I mean, truthfully, the cost.
Yeah, mostly that's why I was asking. I don't think a hook is going to cost that much money, but if you put 3 benches at every playground and you have 2 playgrounds and then you have 6 things, like it like everything, it gets expensive real fast.
Right.
That's the only reason I want to mention it now.
I'm going to see if Dr. Mussolini remembers this flashback, but I was at Belmont Hills and I saw a buddy bench, which were installed at Downingtown when Dr. Mussolini and I were both there, which is a park bench. But I remember that concept from Downingtown, and some of it was applied here at Belmont Hills, which I was very happy. Mr. Herman, when we finish questions with the committee, if you would give me a second, there was actually information I did not share, but I don't want to jump around too much, but you can just put me in there as a placeholder first after after the committee members speak.
Thanks. That's everything.
Kimberly, anything?
Yeah, just a few minor questions. Mr. Lill, I was curious, when you say the consultant, are you talking about a playground architect or someone else? Are you using it interchangeably? You're on mute.
Yes, professional consultant I'm using interchangeably. My envisioning, and the company I've been speaking to, are playground consultants, landscape architects. There is a section portion of the architecture community and some of the engineering community that does this as a specialty. So
Yeah, but I'm saying there are specialized playground architects, and are we going to reach out to any of those folks? Like I mentioned it before, Studio Ludo was one that's in Philadelphia that I know off the top of my head.
that actually, and Mr. Herman, I just got a segue, so I'm gonna just jump in there.
Okay, wait,
So
wait, one more quick question, and this one you may or may not have the answer to. Is most playground equipment manufactured in the U.S. or would that be out of the country, or we don't know?
It's a really good question. I mean, legally, we'd have to fall back on the Steel Products Procurement Act, which is part of the, you know, the public bid process. But you know, that's something that is part of our procurement obligations per the applicable regulations.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So, Mr. Herman, if you don't mind, because like Ms. Garrison did actually give a good segue for me to go through. The types companies are specifically the types of firms, professionals, and again, I do use that interchangeably. We have collected different references. Now, we haven't spoken to all these firms. Obviously, once we have an RFP in hand, that actually would have a really good conversation piece, or be good to discuss based on it. So types of firms. Heckerdorn Shiles is TE to different Easttown. They've actually already reached out to us. Architera has done work at Abington School District in North Penn. And again, I'm talking specific to playgrounds. I'm not talking about turf fields or, tennis courts. This is specific to playgrounds. Community Design Collaborative. I think they were connected to the Smith Playground in Philadelphia. Murata Main Architects, Chichester and Ridley has utilized them for, again, specifically playgrounds. And then, as you mentioned, Studio Ludo, that's FDR Park. I think specifically it's the Anna Verna Playground. And I was just reading an Inquirer article about that. I think it was published back in February of 2024 that specifically spoke about Studio Ludo. So thank you.
And I think I also provided you, Mr. Lill, with something from the community. We had gotten some comments from community members that wanted to provide names of companies as well. So we've been forwarding that along to you as well, and we'll continue to do. Melanie, any questions?
Yeah, yes, I do. I have a couple. Just to go back to your comment about the buddy benches, I remember those well from my daughter's elementary school days. The HSAs were very much into funding those. The question, I'm looking at 5.1 and it talks about inclusive playgrounds, and I wonder or inclusive environments, and that is a broad statement that isn't really defined, and I'm just wondering, what minimum standard are we setting for this RFP as far as what's expected for inclusive and accessible playgrounds? And is it going to be based on the data collection, or is there an overarching information or any legislation that defines this?
So, I mean, clearly, any design professional that we hire is going to have to make sure that it complies with the applicable codes and standards, which is listed there. And that's baseline. Really, that's part of what we want to get the community feedback from. That's what we want to have this architect, this design firm guide us through, and make sure there's a clear understanding between us and the design firm that we're looking for above and beyond just accessible. What kind of that takes shapes and how that kind of evolves. I think that's actually part of the process, and it is kind of a broad. I think that's very accurate. It's a broad definition, but if I was afraid to start getting specific, I would inadvertently narrow it down inadvertently. Okay.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I was curious about that. The other thing is, sorry, I have my notes. We're asking them to suggest a playground. Are we also considering that if they have a different design, to move the playground from a different area that might create a space that is better use of the space in that school? Or are we asking them to keep the playgrounds in place of where they are?
No, I think there is the opportunity to move things around. I can think of one or two schools right now where I think we could reutilize some of the space. And as we give the input, again, we would sit down with the design firm, the professional. I think each principal would have a really good feedback into that, and then we need to get the community feedback. I think there's a lot of certainly there's a lot of opportunities, and that's part of how this is going to evolve.
Okay, and then lastly, one thing to consider is that wherever the township requires that if you are doing any changes, that you need to go to the local civic association make a presentation of that's affected by that within the township that covers the area where you're making the changes. So just to be something that who would make that presentation, and whether those type of presentations need to be factored into the costs.
And I think, Ms. Schaffmeister, I think as we get this developed, I want to look at it, and again, not to diminish the local input. I mean, that's a very valid point with. Certainly for the community, I mean, that this is going to be as a community asset. As we develop our overall layout, and then as we develop which projects are being done in which timeline, we could hire this firm, or if we decide we want to use somebody else, that would incorporate into like the next phase as part of those soft costs that I had included. I just wanted to get it to a point where there was a, very clear defined scope and a deadline for them. And this can then move through the various phases and steps between, from here to actual completion. So I would call that like a phase two, for lack of a better term.
And I've also been, and Melanie, I've also been meeting with commissioners to kind of discuss this offline, and it's been welcomed with a lot of support. So when the time comes to help facilitate moving this through that process as well, we can reach out and utilize them as a resource.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks. And yeah, I appreciate all the hard work that's gone into this. And I do appreciate the fact that you're thinking forward about having it as a master agreement so we can more easily move things along more quickly. Okay, that's all from me. Thank you.
So I have a couple questions, but I'd actually like to hold off on that. I'd like to get the community input first, and then we can always circle back. So, Ms. LaPera, can we see who has? I see a couple people with people's hands up, but I'd like to hear what the community has to say and comments, please.
First, we have Tanya Schreiber, then Kara, and then Danielle.
Hi. I was wondering, I noticed that we still have the same November map of the schools that we were talking about last time where I'm sorry, I'm all blurred. I didn't realize that. So I think as looking back over the definitions, I think the difference might be that the current description here is of all playgrounds, while the school district has asphalt play areas as well. And the play areas are not listed in the assessment, which means we don't know, at least I don't know what type of accessibility they have if a child in a wheelchair, for example, wanted to use them or even reach them. So I guess I would ask, I'm not sure if today's the right day to do it, or maybe it's next month's meeting, but I would hope that there would be an opportunity for us to either expand the scope of this description to just literally say, we'd like you to assess the entire property and determine what accessibility the children have as they go out to recess, or that we perhaps have a meeting where we discuss where those red squares, what additional red squares we might need to add to the fall presentation to ensure that we do add all of the areas where children might want to join their friends and play during recess.
Paragraph 4.3.4, the site survey is going to include all outdoor recreational facilities, fields, basketball courts, gaga pits, trails, and hard surface play areas, etc. So that's going to be part of the assessment.
So if there is an area that wasn't listed,
Correct.
That wasn't listed in that drop-down list, those are still going to be assessed.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
So I think the expectation is that, like what Mr. Lill and Melanie were saying before, is that it's an opportunity to like redefine the space. So it's going to be looking at the outdoor space and not staying within the confines potentially of that a playground has to be here, a gaga pit has to be here, but looking at all of the space and making sure that if we're going to go through the cost and effort of going through this, that we have developed the space into the most usable and inclusive possible.
So they are
Mr.
okay. They're going to assess the ones that already exist and ensure that they're brought up to kind of ADA compliance and accessibility as well.
Well,
So if
the
you look
ones, sorry, so the playgrounds currently under the law, they are so it's a legal question, but
That might be grandfathered in, I guess.
My understanding is right, is that they don't need to be necessarily upgraded. But obviously that's not the standard, and that's not what we want, right? We want to make sure that they're inclusive. So what we're doing, we're looking at the playground that currently exist. I think that was the first part, and making sure that they are safe, right? And that there's no issues. But then the second piece is redesigning both those playgrounds as well as the space to make sure that we upgrade them or replace them in a way that is inclusive, and that with the feedback from the community to make sure that ultimately all children can use them and that they're accessible. Does that
My
make
understanding
sense?
would be that if there was asphalt play space that, for example, had been installed and either it's still pending final plan or it was built before the ADA I mean, the ADA is relatively young compared to our properties. Has anyone gone through to ensure that all grandfathered play spaces have been brought up to current ADA compliance?
Again, the hard surface play areas, I'm completely unaware of anything that the flat asphalt area creates an ADA concern. But in the big picture, and again, we're looking at the entire property. Please note, I mean, the playground 1, playground 2 is just more from a roadmap perspective. Like, here's Belmont Hills Elementary, here's where it's located. This is where we currently have playground equipment. Inclusive of that entire property, inclusive with the entire borders, you'll see that the survey also is going to identify where the school building footprint is. Well, clearly, we're not going to move the building. However, if you notice that it very clearly states that we want to locate where the exterior doors are, because in order for a playground to be, usable or utilizable by the students, they got to get out of the building to the playground. So these are the types of things that we're going to evaluate. A flat asphalt play area does not create an ADA issue. The overall access and how children get from lunch to recess or recess to lunch. That's where we have to look at where the building is, where the doors are, different accessibility and pathways in and out. So I think that's probably what you're referring to.
Okay, thank you.
Kara Herman.
Good morning. Thanks for taking the time and effort to go over these details today. I appreciate it. For those who don't know, I'm the president of the Lower Merion School District Committee for Special Education, parent volunteer organization. I have a couple questions. First, can we just clarify so there's no misunderstanding by community viewers here about our current playground situations? Are they or are they not compliant with ADA law currently today?
So I am not the lawyer for the school district, but my understanding, and Dr. Mussolini can jump in, but my understanding is that they are compliant under the law, that currently they are compliant.
That's correct, Jason. That's my understanding also.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification.
But Ms. Herman, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't strive to make sure that they are inclusive. That's a whole nother conversation, which I think all of us on this call feel the need for and want to move forward.
I appreciate that. Yes, there's a difference between accessible playgrounds and inclusive playgrounds. And we can talk about that later. I'm sure that will come up with the presentations by the consultants. But I just wanted to put that out there so there's no confusion in the community right now. Secondly, you talked about community engagement as part of the process in moving forward. And I just wanted to mention two things. One, the Committee for Special Education is usually engaged and partnered with as part of that process with the school district, where we can send out an open-ended survey to our listserv, which currently is about 700 parents of and guardians of students who receive special education services and have different disabilities, varying disabilities. The importance of that is that it's a mechanism for parent and guardians to contribute their thoughts anonymously, where then CSE will compile the feedback that we receive and submit it to the school district on a group's behalf, on individuals' behalf. So we would be interested in doing that again. As always, we just aren't doing it for 2 other projects with the district now as well. So happy to do that. Happy to provide that resource, and hopefully you'll gain additional ideas back from it. Also, we had sent over, after the last committee meeting, we sent over a sample survey from a community where they had sent out really a quite open-ended formal survey to it was a town, so it was to their just residents, their taxpayers, asking about what features would you like to see in our playgrounds. It wasn't so much asking about, who do you recommend for a consultant or things like that. It was kind of just like user friendly, like parents, what do you want to see for your children? More kind of a thing. Certainly there's opportunities to do surveying that asks for more than that. But I just wanted to know if we were planning on sending out a survey like that as well. I don't know that that was touched upon in your community report here, community engagement report.
Jason, I can respond to that. We would love to send out a survey, just not now. We would want to get the architect on board and work with him, work with you, and I'm sure there will be surveys sent out because, again, where the community is involved cares in just what you said, designing the apparatus, designing the playground. So yes, just not right now, but yes.
Okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Danielle? Danielle, you're muted.
You're on mute.
All right. I was in one of the last meetings. I don't know if you guys remember. My name is Danielle. I'm a local. I was born and raised here. I recently had a hand in renovating Gladwin Playground, which finally is getting off the ground. I have a daughter with special needs. I also have two neurotypical children, one of which is at Gladwin Elementary. So I have firsthand experience recently in doing this with the township. I presented it to the board and they approved it with ARPA funds. And so that was done. I think I have a pretty leg up on this process. So my questions are as follows. They are all elementary schools, is that correct? That are being prioritized, right?
It's the assessment only covers the 6 elementary schools.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask about fundraising because I recently talked to the HSA about at Gladwin, asking how I can get involved and asking to speak to the principal, Ellers, about the process and how she's been going about it thus far. And I found out that because of this process, their fundraising process has been stalled because you guys are doing this part. And so their fundraising for their playground has stopped. However, they still have, I mean, funds can go towards anything, but they wanted to continue to raise funds for maybe it is at the end of the day, benches or something like that. However, what are we doing with this possibility that, yes, I know there is discrepancy in areas with the schools and how much people can fundraise and that whole sticky situation. But if there are willing, volunteers, participants in the community, they want to donate, they want to be involved, not just in like picking equipment, for example, in actually fundraising or contributing. I'm curious about the position that you guys have on that.
So that's a great question. And let me just say one thing and then I'll flip it over to Dr. Mussolini. I think that's great. And that's not the only HSA that has reached out. I've had an opportunity to speak with Kinwood Elementary School, the HSA as well. Originally, we thought that we would do it as like a parallel and gather the information and to do the fundraising. The problem that we ran into, and Dr. Mussolini brought up at our last board meeting, is that it's really hard to fundraise when you don't actually know how much money you need.
Right.
And, our expectations or our estimates on it could be completely off. So what the thought was that let's engage the architect, let's gather this information and start the process and have realistic numbers. And then at that point, we'll be in a better situation to reach out to the HSAs, the community, and then figure out the funding, because we didn't want people to start fundraising on something that we don't even know how much is going to be needed to raise at that point. If the HSAs want to independently want to fundraise, I mean, they can do that. This is something that we're looking to do in the future, but it's really hard at this point to give you a dollar amount and say, if you raise X, then we can move forward with the project, because there are all these other steps that we need to make sure that we accomplish before we get there.
Right.
Dr. Mussolini, I didn't know if...
Can I piggyback on you real quick, Jason? There's also, and I tried to look up the exact policy for you, but Board Docs is of course giving me a message that they're under construction, and that's where all of our policies are searchable. There is, I don't have the details off the top of my head, but there is a policy on gifting and how the district has already set out what is allowed to be accepted from different groups and how and when. And so that may also come into play in that sort of thing.
But I also want you to know that in addition to this, we've also explored the grant aspect of this. I know Mr. Lil, and I don't want to speak on his behalf, but has been reaching out and searching about possible grants. We've been receiving some information. One of the commissioners provided me with some information about grants for the township that they used. So we're trying to explore all these different avenues. But again, a lot of the grant information, you're required to put together drawings and provide more direction on it. So it's like a catch-22. So that's why I think, Dr. Mussolini, I don't want to speak on his behalf, but he can jump in, I think that's why his direction was from previous experiences. Let's lock in the architect. Let's start the process of this. And then this will open up the doors to be able to have better ideas on fundraising, on grants, on that type of information.
So what I had ended up doing was I found, because I didn't have district approval yet, obviously, when I brought it to them, I found a company that was willing to work with me, Compin, who's a playground company, and they created something as a draft, version 1, 2, 3, for free, just with my time. And so I know the township has engineers and all those people involved. However, they ended up hiring Compin, and it's like all in-house, so they're contractors, et cetera. I'm curious, the architects, like you're hiring a firm, for example, is that firm then aligned with a playground company? Because, for example, we spoke about budget. With Compin, they said that they basically make it work within, whatever the township had to give them. And we had an idea, we made the design with, outsiders involvement with we had like a committee, I'm sorry. And so I guess my question is it that you need to hire the architect and then the designer, or is it like a package deal with some of these people? Would you consider using one company for all of the playgrounds to kind of like sweeten the deal for that company? And also maybe they would give a, deal with the equipment and the all-in pricing, et cetera.
So if I could answer that, Mr. Herman, the architect we're hiring is the designer. And I'm familiar with Compin. I've installed some of their equipment. And again, that's a specific manufacturer. That's like Chevy. I'm just going to throw that out there. Similar to what we did with the roof assessment, we're looking for an architect, a professional, a design professional who's not connected to one manufacturer, but has the opportunity, the ability to look at different manufacturers to see what's the best options. And then from a pricing standpoint, to your point, if there are ways to do multiple playgrounds and get volume discount on certain things, that would be part of the procurement process as we move forward in the years following. So the procurement is not part of this. That would definitely have to be done project by project. But what I'm recommending is, and again, Compin's a good company. There are Burke, there's George Eli. I've had multiple companies recommended by the facilities managers to me. Look for what the best combination is and what is available on the market as a whole, not just restricting it to one specific manufacturer.
Okay, so they have the opportunity to work within several manufacturers and create like a bid based off of that. Okay,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. As part of the next phase. I mean, then we're into the procurement and we can do things under state consortiums. So there's things we have to bid. That's a whole other.
Right, because like you don't know what is available. Different playground companies have different pieces available, for example.
Which is why that designer will bring that expertise to the table.
Right. That's the bid process. Once we design the specs, then we bid it, and these particular groups that you're mentioning will bid on it.
Yeah.
Okay. And my last comment was just in designing the playground, the equipment with Compin, I did notice that they do have designated equipment for certain age ranges. And so, for example, 2 to 5 was different than 5 to 11. And so most of the equipment I know, I don't know if was it you, Shayna, that you mentioned something about like appropriate ages, making sure that like they are getting the enrichment. I know that they only make it like based on whatever the regulations are for certain ages. And then of course, obviously the footprint of the space will dictate what is going to be able to go there with the amount of space on each side. For example, I mentioned that last time. So I think it'll come together a lot easier than it sounds because there's only so much space, designated space, and so much equipment that can fit in that space and so much money. So I'm hopeful that with the community involvement that we can really get it going. So
And if you look, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry. If you go to a recently installed piece of equipment and you look closely enough, if it's been installed in the past year or two, there's actually a nameplate on it that is going to show the manufacturer, and it will actually have things like the age range. It actually has like, recommended capacity, not so much structural, but how many kids could you fit on a platform?
Right.
That type of thing. So yeah, that's definitely very valid because they even not only market it within certain age range, they actually label it and put nameplates on it to you can find that on newer equipment, maybe not something from 10, 15 years ago, but certainly I think it's gone on in the past year or two. That's very common in the industry for all manufacturers.
Okay. Yeah. Great. Good to know. Thank you.
And just to jump in, like whatever we get back from whoever we award the RFP to is not like set in stone exactly what we're going to do. It's a request for proposal. So this firm is going to come back with their ideas and a presentation. And it's like this, Mr. Lill and his team came forward with this incredibly detailed proposal. And yet there's been lots of support and lots of feedback. And so there are places where things can give and change. And that will absolutely happen. I would eat my shoe if somebody presented us a presentation for a timeline, for money, and for design for 6 elementary schools, and everybody in the community and the district said, that sounds great, let's do it. So there will be lots of time for back and forth and discussion and further community input. As was stated, this is really just a necessary first step to get both the breadth and the depth of what we're looking at to move forward on the project.
And I'm curious as far as collecting information. I know that Ms. Herman had suggested that they have a population that they can get information from, but as far as a principal reaching out with a survey saying, hey, we have the opportunity to redo our playgrounds. Here is a 10-question survey. Would you fill it out? I can guarantee you every parent would be like, yes, absolutely, 100%. And also a question that I had was, local partnerships, like for example, Riverbend, Riverbend Nature Center is local, Schuylkill River Nature Center, places like that, for example, having a spot or a investment in any of the elementary schools, is that not something that happens? If I can give you an example, like if you had a bunch of random space and some trees and they came in with some nature enrichment, for example, and they left it there for the school to kind of maintain, but it wasn't their donation. Do you know what I'm saying? Kind of like a add-on without it being playground equipment. It's more like outdoor enrichment. Is that something that the community has ever considered, partnering with other community resources like for the district, or no?
Well, so typically we would never decline a donation, but I think embedded in your question may be a partnership, a sponsorship, maybe signage, and that's a different situation. But to answer your question, I don't think, as a matter of fact, I think for our board, the last board meeting, we just accepted a donation for something. I can't remember.
We accept donations of trees on what feels like a fairly regular basis. I know because I believe the board has to approve gifts of, I want to say more than like $250 or $500 that a lot of times if say an HSA will raise money to plant trees on a school campus. And that is something that I know I voted to approve many times. So that's more a physical individual tree. I don't know that we've paired with the nature center, but I know that we have We have a residency affiliation with Riverbend for, I believe, our kindergartners and maybe one other grade. I do not recall what other grade it would be, but I know we have those partnerships, so that's something that could be looked into. But it probably wouldn't be part of this stage of the planning.
If I may interrupt, we have Mr. Willis that has asked to for some questions, and I think Ms. Herman also has her hand up again. Mr. Willis, are you available?
Mr. Lill, do we know of any other suburban school district in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, or maybe in Maryland that has done something similar and to completion?
As I stated, North Penn, Council Rock, Abington, to different Easttown.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Ms. Herman?
Hi, thanks again. I just wanted to go back to the timeline for a minute because just wondering what this process dictates breaking ground on one playground would look like with some changes. And since we first started this conversation, originally, Mr. Lill, Mr. Copeland, we were in the room together and we had talked about July. So I'm just looking for some update on that.
So one of the things that I wanted to comment on, and I just wanted to thank the audience for their patience. I recognize that listening to an engineer read through a technical document is about as exciting as watching paint dry. So that's self-assessment, self-reflection on my part. But I think what it reflects is there is a process that a public entity, a public school district would have to go through it, and this is step one. And it does seem very dry, and it seems like this is something out 10 years from now, way off into the distance. As we develop through this RFP, and when we actually have an architect engaged, and there's engagement with the community, and there's presentations being made, it's actually going to look like a playground. It's not going to look like a black and white document. So I just wanted to add to that because I know I didn't bring much excitement to the topic, but as a department, we're actually really excited to get this report back when we're able to get through all the necessary due diligence. What would happen is the report would be presented to the school board facilities committee meeting. And again, we have to align that with advertised meeting dates, which August 14th is one of them. And then the 5-year plan, which is described further back in the RFP, the first installation would have been targeted at summer of 2026. And again, that's subject to funding, but that necessarily wouldn't change the designer's task. There, we got to give them some type of a timeline for them to do cost estimates and things of that nature. And again, all that is subject to funding and how they would recommend doing the implementation and things of that nature.
But all of that is subject. I mean, this is all ideas and thoughts. Nothing set in stone. It depends on how things move. We have asked the finance committee and Mr. Orlando to see if there are ways to allocate funds for this upcoming budget for a playground. So this isn't like we're waiting on this to move other avenues. We've asked for that. We're still exploring grants. So there's many hopefully different avenues that are moving at parallel tracks.
So part of what I understand, it's a jigsaw puzzle to put together. Part of what was discussed in a meeting where CSE was present was the details pertaining to laying the flooring, the special flooring that has weather restrictions on what temperatures you can put it in and how much time it needs in between the different layers of putting it down. And so it's my personal understanding that if we don't do it this summer, early summer, when it's below a certain degree, then you might have to wait a significant. To me, it feels like it will be pushed back a full year because you can't install that flooring in the winter. Correct me. And we don't want to close a playground during, school year while it's up and running. So I'm just looking for clarification on that. If we don't make it this summer, that means our first playground won't break ground for a full additional year. Is that correct assumption?
Kara, where did you hear that we were going to break ground in? I mean, basically, summer is what, 4 or 5 months away. Where was that?
CSC attended a meeting when Megan Schaefer was our acting superintendent, and there was representation from student services as well as our facilities department. Mr. Lill and Mr. Copeland were there as well. I'm trying to remember. Jim, do you remember what month it was? It was several months.
To provide clarity, what Ms. Herman stated about the seasonal temperature restrictions and weather restrictions on the pour-in-place surface, that's accurate. This is a project you would do during the summer. There was no commitment made, and I mean, the people in that room don't have the ability to make that commitment that any playground project was going to be done in any particular summer. It was just identified, similar to doing roofs. A playground will be done during a summer. There was no commitment made that it would be done summer 2025, 2026, or anything thereof.
I didn't mean to misrepresent. I know there was no commitment, but I know that we were discussing this season. That's all I'm saying. So we'd be talking about next season, I guess.
So just, Ms. Herman, just for clarity, it's going to take us a month or so, maybe 6 weeks to get this RFP has to sit out. Architects, we will ask architects to respond to it. Other architects will, there's laws according to this. Jim could probably explain those. Is it a month, Jim, or it's up to us?
We would want to have a 3-week window for them to respond so they could ask the necessary
3-week
questions.
window
And
to
do the homework.
respond. Then we need to choose the architectural firm, which the board typically does. And so as I'm explaining all that, you're seeing timelines. Obviously, I can't, and I'm only here a few more weeks, Ms. Herman. I can't see anything starting this summer, but I could be totally wrong. And I don't want to misrepresent anything, but that's why I'm asking who definitively said we would be starting this summer. Is I just with the doing this the proper way, I just can't see it.
To be clear, no one definitively said it, but it was
Okay,
being discussed. There was timelines. It was a lengthy conversation about the layers of the flooring situation and temperatures, and it was definitely discussed. That's all.
Is it a fact that they're not going to work on it other than the summer? Like any playground, like they would not take the playground, I guess, construction into the school year? Because I'm curious about that. Is that a restriction we're working with?
Let me just be honest with you. Just seeing this RFP, see the extent of it. You see where we have to get in community involvement to design it. We've got permits that have to be done. So I don't think anybody can answer your question. I just don't see it.
Danielle, are you?
Being built
I'm sorry,
summer.
Dr. Mussolini. Danielle, are
No,
you
that's
asking
okay.
if they will close playgrounds for construction during the school
Yeah,
year?
I was just so you know, Kara, like what we with Gladwin, start to finish, I would say the actual actionables took about a year until they just started working on it, and they did start working on it, and it's cold. I mean, it's the winter. It's not like it's not possible for them to do it, obviously, if the ground is willing. So just to put that out there, like it is possible for them to do it in the colder months. I guess it just depends if they were going to take that out of the school situation.
Yeah.
I don't know. That was the question.
Yeah, I think that's all stuff that we can discuss. I think though that, the difference between a community park is that people can go to other community parks. If you take out a field or if you take out the playground, for the children, what else will be used? But I think we're getting ahead of ourselves. I think that I want to focus on this specific RFP and to see if there's any other questions. My suggestion, if there aren't, well, Ms. Buckman, do you have your hands up?
Yeah, I just wanted to chime in a little bit on the community engagement process. So when we get to that point, when we have a proposal, then we will obviously reach out through our normal communications channels with school messenger at the school level, at the district level. We'll partner with my counterpart at the township, because our school playgrounds aren't just used by our school children. When schools close, they're used by the entire community. So our outreach for that community engagement is going to go beyond individual schools. So once we get to that point, we'll develop a communication plan. It'll be multi-pronged. There will be various opportunities for probably in-person input, for survey input. We have a product we use called Thought Exchange that allows for a great way for people to participate, share ideas, and actually see like how priorities are rising and falling within a community or within a group. So I just want to.
Don't you think it's important, like before they finish the process, before they design it, don't you think that the involvement from at least like the principals, for example, is that going to be included? Because for them to design something for a price wouldn't make any sense if the design is not at all applicable to the population, obviously.
Right. And I believe that Mr. Lill, in describing the RFP, explained that part of the process would be meetings with all the principals. But I'm just saying, as far as the wider community engagement, we would develop a communications plan for that and follow through to maximize engagement.
But yes, to
Actually,
answer your question, oh, sorry, Dr. Mussolini.
That's okay, Jason. Well, I think also, Jim, correct me, in this RFP is also what architects call a charrette with the community in terms of designing this. So it's not only our principals. This is where the community will actually come in to a room and work with our architects. Jim, is that included in there?
A Zoom room. Yes, I have two 2-hour meetings that
some way.
For accessibility, figured for availability of things of that nature. And then we want them to give us their outline of how they run the charrette. So we look at it beforehand. Ms. Buckman can provide input to make sure that the format they have for these community meetings, that there's the right dialogue. I mean, the last thing anybody needs is another engineer reading a technical document. We want to get the engagement involved. And that's how we're going to develop it when they get to those two community meetings, which I was recommending is Zoom again, but that's always negotiable. It's always negotiable.
So are there any other comments, Ms. LaPera?
I do not see any more comments. Thank you.
So my suggestion on this, because I know that we've been on the call and I appreciate all the feedback from the community. I think this is wonderful. I think this is the whole purpose, right? Is to answer questions, to get ideas from the community, and to have that interaction. I think this is extremely thorough. And I don't know, looking at our milestone and our dates, I don't really know how much more really we can kind of flush out. I think that this includes everything. Unless Melanie, Kimberly, and Shayna disagree, my suggestion would be is to provide this to the board for Tuesday. We can reach out to the board members and let them know that this is available for them to review. And I think that we should present it to the board and have the board vote on it on Tuesday to see about moving forward with it, and to put it out for an RFP. I don't see why waiting till April will accomplish anything more. I think we should move forward with it and get the information. If this is what Mr. Lill and Dr. Mussolini believe is the appropriate next step, I defer to them, and I think that this would be a great move forward. So
Mr. Herman, April 24th is not the next step in this process. There's going to be other work being done. That's when we're going to be able to give you proposals. So we still have to issue the RFP. I have to put a pricing sheet on it. We're going to be working on this next week. But remember, with the 3-week turnaround, there's work being done behind the scenes, just as there was leading up to this meeting.
Jim, this RFP is ready to be approved by the board on Tuesday, right?
If that's an agenda, I mean, I don't think we've had an RFP approved in the past.
Okay.
You would approve the architect whom we recommend, but this is part of that process.
That's down the line. So,
which would be,
so in other words, you just get approval here from committee, and this is out on the street, and we're starting the process
next week. I need to recover from the snow a little. Yeah, we can get it out next week.
Yeah.
Oh, then perfect.
Absolutely.
Then I think. Then unless, I'd like to just hear what Kimberly and Shayna and Melanie believe, but otherwise I think I'm okay with moving that forward. In the meantime, just to make sure that the remainder of the board is aware of it, I'm sure that they're going to watch it, but we can also provide them with a copy of the RFP in the meantime, just so that they're kept in the loop as well. But Shayna, Kimberly, and Melanie, any issues with moving forward with the RFP?
No, I think that sounds
great.
I'm 100% in agreement with going forward.
Yeah. And Jason, it's in anybody who's on the board can go into the facilities committee agenda meeting notes and it's there. So if you wanted to just send out an email to the full board and say, hey, this is here, we're talking about it, please go take a look at it just for your information, that would be all we needed to do on that.
Okay, perfect. So I can do that in the meantime, but that doesn't hold up anything and we can move forward with it. Melanie, any issues with that?
That's perfect.
All right, awesome. All right, so if we can, Mr. Lil, move forward with it, putting out the RFP. And again, from our committee and also from our community, we really appreciate all the time, the effort that you and your team have put together on such short notice. Really, really appreciate it. All right, so I think that that's the last topic. If there are no other questions, we are adjourned until we have the board meeting on Tuesday, and then we have our next facilities and purchasing meeting in the beginning of March. So I hope everyone has a great day, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, everyone.